Hey everyone, Alyssa Hope here. So if you don't know me, I have a couple of channels on YouTube that are hockey oriented, but I wanted to do something a little different and branch out and get away from hockey with this third channel. So I read a lot. Always reading. I prefer audible books. I actually learned that you retain more if you take in things audibly. So I'm always listening to books throughout the day. But I wanted to just go over different books that I really love and are really special to me personally. And one that just, it's changed my life. Like, it's one of those life-changing books. And I can't say it enough. Because here in Western society, we are not really taught these things. And Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher, he's definitely my favorite spiritual teacher, has made this easy to understand for us Westerners that are just so far from even grasping these concepts without it being kind of dumbed down to us. So in The Power of Now, I've listed a few of the things that I've really taken away from this book. I've read it several times, and it's definitely one that I can just read over and over and over, and you're still taking things in because it's so loaded. But the first thing, when you first start the book, you'll learn that you are not your mind. Now, when Tolle says this, he means that you're more than your mind. We have this inner voice that we always hear. It never shuts off. You hear that we have over 60,000 thoughts a day on average. Like, that's insane. For most people, they can't escape that voice, and it drives them insane. They'll do things like, drugs, drinking, gambling, risky sex. When you learn to separate your thoughts and realize that they are not you from yourself, things really begin to change. So I learned that when you learn to detach, when you learn to rise above thought and to realize, hey, I don't have to give in to that anxious thought telling me, that I'm going to screw this thing up, or I don't have to give in to the voice that's telling me that I'm worthless and I can't do this. A lot of times, and I've realized this with myself when I've actually been more aware and conscious, a lot of times your mind's wrong when it thinks, oh, this person, they didn't acknowledge me because they just don't care. Or maybe, your mind's wrong and they just didn't notice you were there. They didn't see you, or things like that. When you can rise above and detach and realize that those thoughts aren't you, they aren't who you are, it really starts to change your life. Second thing, the past and the future don't exist, only the present. And these are just mental constructions. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's really true, because when I think about it, I've only lived in the present. Tolle tells you this. You've never lived in the past. You've never lived in the future. You're only living in the present. You can't go back. You can't go forward. Like, if you want to, it's not like Click, it's not like a movie, but we're only living in the present. And I think when you realize this, the past especially doesn't have that power over you anymore. And you're like, you know what, that may have happened, but I don't have to carry it with me. I don't have to carry that regret. I don't have to carry that blame. All of that stuff. I could just lay it down and move forward. And also, I think it's important in the book, he goes over how the past, living in the past, often it will give you more depression. And then living in the future, worrying about the future, when your mind is there instead of here, you're more anxious because it's so uncertain. So the more that we live in the present, the more we're actually living, the more we're actually being, and that's what the book discusses. Number 3 is events are going to happen, but they're just events. A lot of our struggles come from how we interpret something. And finally, number 3, events that happen are just events. So it's only our interpretation of things that makes it personal to us. I like to think of it as sort of like coffee. I know that sounds strange, but when you make coffee, things go through a filter, right? And then you get the coffee. Events that happen have to pass through us. and they go through our own little filter, and it's all like specific to us. So how we take it in, we are basing it on our past experiences. Our brain just does this, and we're making it into our own interpretation. And when we put a label on something, a label on an event, a label on something that has happened to us personally, we make it personal, but we also bring in resistance. And when something happens, for instance, you look outside and you see that it's cloudy and raining, and you start the day, and you think, oh my gosh, I hate the rain. I don't want to go to work. It's going to suck. That's resistance. You're resisting what is. But when you realize that being angry about it, being annoyed about it, being upset about it isn't going to do anything to change it, then it's power. And that's really what this book has taught me. I look at something and I get upset, and I'm like, why am I doing this? It's not going to change anything. It's only going to make me upset. It's kind of like that famous saying, revenge is the same as drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So you are harboring those bad feelings and expecting the outcome, to change, to be different than it really is. And when you fully accept how it is, like it's a rainy and cloudy day instead of sunny, and you're like, okay, no big deal. That's acceptance. When you accept what is, you aren't going to harbor that resistance that, makes your life miserable without you really even knowing it. And being a person that struggled with anxiety most of my life, this has really helped me because even when I lost my debit card when I was on vacation, this has been it's been about a month ago, I would flip out. Like, that was the thing that just set me off. I would just lose it. And I lost my debit card when I was on vacation a month ago in Pennsylvania. And I knew internally that, I was freaking out. Like, I could feel it. But I thought to myself, you getting upset is not going to change the fact that it's lost. You're just going to upset people around you and yourself. And I just kept trying to think that over and over and over and observe the emotions that were going on and I was feeling and the thoughts and things. And I was able to stay relatively calm. I was like, okay. And I just thought through it, and I was like, okay, I left it at the restaurant that we went to before we came back to the hotel. And so I was just proactive. I called, I asked if it was there. It was there, and problem solved. Beforehand, I would have, went off the rails, yelled at somebody, been really upset, and just, miserable for no reason. And that would be my reaction. And so I definitely have noticed changes within myself from reading this book. I've had some family members that have told me that they've just noticed dramatic changes in me ever since I started, reading some of these books, The Power of Now, reading some of these books. The Untethered Soul is another book that's really helped me a lot personally, and I've read it a few times, and it's a very, very good and powerful book as well. But I love to read, so I'm thinking about doing some other kind of summaries and some insight videos, and just talking about different things that I take away from books, and why they've meant so much to me, or why I decided to share those things with you all. But I appreciate you watching this if you've made it all the way to this point, and I hope to see you next time.